Loading.
Okay.
I'll let you know when it's live, but I think you can see it too.
Oops. Is that big enough on the screen?
I can see it pretty well. I'm not sure if people can do more of a full screen setup, but it looks like we're live now, Sarah.
All right, wonderful.
And I'm just pasting some information in the chat box for folks who are attending today that has some information on troubleshooting in case you're having any issues. But Sarah, I think you can take it away.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session, Pesticides, Disinfectants, and COVID-19. My name is Sarah Ryan. I'm the Environmental Director for the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians. I've got about 18 slides that I'm going to share, and then we're going to go into our roundtable. And that will be a discussion. And I know that we don't have a way to talk to each other, so please put any questions that you have in the chat. And then when we get to the roundtable, that will be with questions as well. So I work for the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians. The tribe is located in Clear Lake or around Clear Lake, which is the largest natural freshwater lake in California. And we are in Lake County. So we're going to talk about COVID-19 and disinfectants, and I wanted to give a background on pesticides as well. So hopefully you will find that helpful. And actually, I need to shut my door, so hold on just for a moment. Sorry about that. So, you know, I was thinking that do we really need to give a background on COVID-19? We've all been suffering through it for 2 years and almost 2 years. And no matter how you feel about it in terms of the politics of it or, you know, the transparency of the government about it, it's still something that we've had to, we've all been reacting to and having to take action about. I was a kind of a nerd in terms of tracking COVID in the early months, especially. And this is actually a screenshot of the Johns Hopkins mapping back in 2020 when there were only 213 deaths worldwide. And you can see the location of the cases and the deaths, and it was primarily in China at that point. So this disease is something that you know, we've had to take a lot of action on, and today I'll be talking about the disinfectant side of it. So in January, we started to see the deaths in China. By April 2020, we're in a full-scale planning mode for impacts to our communities. I know many tribes are working at this level of working with the county and with their Office of Emergency Services, with FEMA. I believe FEMA was involved, and you know, just participating in meetings, looking at the capacity in terms of hospital beds, who the vulnerable were in the county and in our communities, and what kinds of resources that we had. So this is just a screenshot that I took back in April of what was happening in Lake County, and this is information that was put together by the state for every county in California. Oops, sorry. So, you know, when COVID-19 was being explained early on, and you know, there's been some better understanding of it over time. It is officially called it's Coronavirus Disease 2019, which is CO for Corona, VI for virus, D for disease, and 19 because in 2019 is when it was identified in China, is caused by this virus, a coronavirus. And that virus is the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. And that's shortened to SARS-CoV-2. So COVID-19 is the disease of that's caused by the virus. So as I mentioned, first reported in Wuhan, China in December 2019, it can cause severe respiratory illness, up to pneumonia and death in the higher risk categories of the population. And over time, we've had a better understanding of how it's transmitted. I certainly remember watching videos online about having to wash all your groceries. That's not really recommended anymore. And that was sort of a viral, no pun intended, a viral activity that was promoted for a while. This is a screenshot of cumulative confirmed cases per million people in March 2020. You can see that within a few short months that the United States had, a very high level of confirmed cases within the country. So from, as time went on and the understanding of the transmission really was confirmed, there's been even more emphasis on avoiding contact with the droplets from an infected person. And so that's why they talked about the distance between everybody, because you don't know if they're carrying it or not. If you're going to be in a building where there are a lot of people, what was stated was, have the windows open, have lots of fresh air, wear a mask, wash your hands, sanitize your hands, and disinfect surfaces. So these are ways to reduce the virus being picked up by other people. So now I'm going to move into the discussion about disinfectants and sanitizers. And you can't talk about that without talking about FIFRA. And that is the regulation regarding chemicals that kill pests. And I thought I would go into this a little bit because there's some misunderstanding out, in the US amongst people about pesticides. And a pesticide is that umbrella term. So pesticides are regulated by US EPA under the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. And that law governs the registration, distribution, sale, and use of pesticides. Now, I didn't know this until recently, but FIFRA actually started in 1947, had a slightly different name, and it was actually under USDA and not EPA. But it was mainly for labeling, just to make sure that people weren't defrauded. So it was transferred to EPA when EPA was created in 1970, and it's been amended a few times and probably needs to be amended again with some more updates. But in any case, it is what we all, when we're talking about a pesticide, FIFRA has everything to do with it. And I listed on this slide the types of pesticides. So, and it's always classified by the target pests. So an algicide kills algae. An avicide kills birds, like it's specifically targeted to kill birds. There's antifoulants, antimicrobials. You can see as you're going through this list that all of these are just a type of pesticide that is targeted for a specific pest. The herbicides is plants, molluscicides is mollusks. Disinfectants and sanitizers is where we get into, is what we're going to talk about further in this presentation. So when you talk about FIFRA and you talk about pesticides, there's some key aspects from FIFRA that we should all remember when we're looking at a pesticide. And that is that every pesticide, everything that has pesticidal claims, it claims that it kills something, it manages something. It has to have an EPA registration number. And EPA registers, it's not approval. It is an approval, but to say EPA approved pesticide is not really correct. It's an EPA registered pesticide. So EPA registers these pesticides after the applicant, the company that's making this pesticide, shows EPA that that if the user uses the pesticide according to the specific instructions and specifications about use, that it will not generally cause unreasonable adverse effects on the environment. So once the applicant shows that to EPA, they will register it, and it's a long process from what I understand, and also very expensive. The FIFRA is administered by the Office of Pesticide Programs at US EPA. And then, very importantly, the label of the pesticide is where all the important information is about that pesticide. And I have a slide about this, but it's the critical information about how to safely use the pesticide product and avoid harm to human health and the environment. And pesticide labels are legally enforceable. So you've probably heard the label is the law. And that is the case. So it tells you how much you can use, what you can use it on, how to safely store it, how to safely dispose of it, first aid issues, and other things like that. And I'm bringing this up because, when we're talking about a new virus, such as COVID-19, there were no labels that said that it could be used on COVID-19, the virus that causes COVID-19. There were some things that said it could be used on coronavirus, other versions of coronavirus. But in general, it did not say, there was nothing that was specifically, the label did not specifically say anything about the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So as I mentioned, the pesticide labels are the law. They identify the target pest, how it must be applied, how much to use, how to store it, and how to dispose of it. And these requirements are based on the registration process and the information that the applicant, the company, the pesticide company, shared with EPA and their review of the documentation and the registration process itself. And these things all must be followed in order to avoid unreasonable adverse effects. And remember what I said earlier, that these specifications are there to be able to avoid these undesirable and unreasonable effects. So you want to read the label. Some of you who are older might remember there was kind of a campaign about reading the label. I remember some icons about it. Don't really see it much anymore, but it's still something that's really important to do outreach about. And we've actually had some over here at Big Valley, we've had some chemical safety classes where we discussed with the community how to read the label, and that thing, how to store, whether it's pesticides or oil or automotive products or household cleaners. We discussed how to safely use it, how to store it, how to dispose of it, and it all started with reading the label of the product. So you can see on this graphic on the right side of the screen that here's a sample type of pesticide. So this says it's a mosquito repellent, and this might be a little small. Let me see if I can make this bigger. So every pesticide label will have signal words about how toxic the product is. There's caution, warning, and danger. It will mention the active ingredient. So that's the thing that actually does the killing, the side. So you want to understand that. And sometimes the active ingredient is a really small percentage of the total formulation. And that's just what's required, to do, to control the pest. Again, reading the entire label, it gives a direction for use. That will be on the label. Every bottle is different sizes, and this wording can be super, super small. And that it's hard. It's hard to read the label. And we've actually asked the community in a survey before, when over here at Big Valley, it's like, how often do you read the label? Like the first time you buy the product, or every time before you use the product, or never? And it was a wide variety of answers. And I think it's a good question to ask your tribal community, because it might be an opportunity to do some outreach about how to read the label, and then also to provide some help with those who don't have good eyesight to be able to see these incredibly tiny letters. But it will say directions for use. How and where should I use the product, and how much is okay? If you use way too much, if you use more than it suggests or requires, then it could be dangerous. And it's also illegal in terms of FIFRA. So you want to be able to understand what the directions for use say. It will give some precautionary statements, like if there are hazards to humans or animals or water organisms and things like that. It'll talk about storage and disposal. How should it be stored? Whether it should be out not in hot conditions, or it needs to be in a properly vented location, that type of thing. And then it'll give the EPA registration number. And this is a unique product number that you should see on everything that makes pesticidal claims. You should say all of these things. And that EPA registration number, you can actually Google it and see what more information about that particular pesticide. And then finally, there's going to be information on the label about first aid and what you should do if you are exposed to this pesticide. And usually it'll say something about poison control and flushing, and every label is different. Every pesticide is different. But this is really important to be able to understand how to safely use a pesticide, and also important in our discussion about disinfectants and COVID. Make that a little smaller. So with the SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, in 2020, I believe this is correct. Yeah, in 2020, there were no disinfectants that were registered to kill that virus. Because remember, the label is going to say how it can be used, what it can be used on. At that time, because of the registration process, there was no ability to change the labels, to test, to prove the efficacy, change the labels and get it out to market, and to do it in enough time so that it can be useful. But EPA doesn't just say, oh yeah, we'll grant you this new use. I mean, there has to be a nexus of, accurate data. So what EPA did was it created this thing called List N. And here is the URL for the List N and defined products on it. And this list was a list of disinfectants, and disinfectants are things you use on surfaces. So it's a list of disinfectants that meet EPA's criteria for use against the virus. These products had to demonstrate effectiveness against a harder to kill virus, or to demonstrate effectiveness against another human coronavirus similar to SARS-CoV-2. So that List N became the place where people could check and governments could check what actually was effective, what should be effective against the virus causing COVID-19. Because again, you wouldn't be able to go into a store, especially in these early months, in this first year, you wouldn't be able to go into a store and find something that said that it could kill the SARS-CoV-2 virus, the virus that causes COVID-19. And just because a product label states that it kills 99.9% of viruses does not mean it will be effective against SARS-CoV-2, because it is a virus in and to itself. So making that broad claim, or having that broad claim, is, it obviously was, they were able to prove that, to put that on their labels in previous years. But again, it doesn't mean it could kill the COVID virus. So that List N was EPA's way of allowing flexibility of the existing data showing that it could the product demonstrated effectiveness to kill things that were harder to kill than the COVID-19 virus, or something similar to a COVID-19 virus. So not every product made it on that List N, and that List N still exists. You can get on the product list and take a look. And I actually have a screenshot of that in my presentation of what that looks like, which I will show in a minute. So here's some additional information about that I thought would be useful regarding which disinfectants kill COVID-19. So these two pages are found on an EPA on the EPA website, and as it states, EPA expects all products on List N to kill the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and that's the virus that causes COVID-19. So it kind of is a flow chart thing. So a person can ask the question, I already have a product, does it kill SARS-CoV-2? So the recommendation in the flow chart is that you first need to find the EPA registration number on the label. And that is that EPA registration number with multiple numbers afterwards and sometimes some letters. You want to find that. And then you want to go to the list, epa.gov list end tool website, or the previous page that I showed, the URL for the list. And you want to enter, and it gives some instructions on entering the first two parts of the registration number, and it will identify whether that particular disinfectant is on list N to and it's demonstrated efficacy against killing something harder to kill than the SARS-CoV-2 virus or something similar to the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And if it's on that list, then you can expect that it will kill the SARS-CoV-2 virus. If you wanted to, on the other hand, if you wanted to find a product to kill that virus, then you can use the search tool to browse the products. So again, going to that list end tool URL and enter, you can, and I have a page about this, but you can enter you can search by active ingredient, or some additional, like the surfaces, like the use areas, or some other things. So both of those, that's a nice flow chart to navigate your way through the list end tool to see if something is able to kill the virus that causes COVID-19, the disinfectant that kills COVID-19. This graphic is just the kind of unpacking of the EPA registration number. I thought this was kind of helpful, that the first it's basically in two parts. The first part is who registered the product. So you can actually, see all the chemicals that Bayer or, Monsanto or, any company, any pesticide company registered the product. There's a product number, and there's also a distribution, who is distributing the product. So it can start to get really easy to see trends of or recognize a pesticide based on looking at these numbers. So it does talk about if the product and the company names don't match on the list end tool. And just know that there's a lot of different there's brand names for pesticides. Sometimes a pesticide will be known by its active ingredient. Like when you say glyphosate, that's the active ingredient in Roundup and other herbicides. So just make sure that you're getting your terms right and when you are trying to look that up. So there are now some disinfectants that are registered and have on their label the pesticide's effectiveness against the SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. These products are also being put on list N. So now that we're almost a couple of years into it, there are companies that, with their products, have made it through the registration process, or kind of the additional information they had to show EPA that it was actually effective against the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So now you can find some products that is EPA registered for SARS-CoV-2, but there are still products on list N that are, that aren't registered specifically for SARS-CoV-2, but meet those other qualifications needed to say it will kill it. So here's our graphic on 6 steps for effective disinfectant use. You want to check your product and make sure that it's EPA approved or EPA registered. And you can look on the epa.gov list N to see if it's on the list of approved disinfectants. In other words, that it will kill the virus. You want to read the directions, read the label as we went through before, because that's really important in terms of how much you can use and how you use it. In terms of disinfectants, you want to leave it on a surface for a certain amount of time, and that's what the directions will actually say how to use it for that. You want to pre-clean the surface, like wash it with soap and water in case there's like visible dirt on the surface first before you use a disinfectant, so it can work on the surface itself. You want to follow the contact time that's on the label. so that you know that the product is effective. You want to wear gloves and wash your hands, so that you are not getting the product on your hands. And you know that if there is COVID-19 or if there is a virus on the surface, you don't want to get that on your hands, obviously. And then you want to safely store it, because safe use, storage, and disposal are really important parts of any chemical safety program. There's more information about all these things on coronavirus.gov. So EPA does expect that all products on List N to disinfect or can disinfect surfaces and kill the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19 if used in the manner according to the label. So that means that the contact time, the other application rate and things like that, those are going to be on or within the label information. So here's a snapshot into the List N tool, disinfectants, and you saw that on a earlier screen. It just in a smaller, it was much smaller. But if you're trying to look up a product and you go to this URL right here, you'll see that you can look it up by EPA registration number. So if you've got something you bought in the store and you want to know for sure whether EPA says that it is effective against killing the virus causing COVID-19, then it will have an EPA registration number on it. So you want to you can type it into this box, or you can look it up by active ingredient. You can look it up by surface types, and here's a drop-down box of the surface type. And you can see for disinfectants, none of it is on a person. You know, it's on surfaces, porous surfaces that are like cloth and you know, chairs, like the cloth of a surface, or it can be a hard non-porous surface. There's also a food contact application with rinse or no rinse required. So you can see that, excuse me, you can find more information based on your keyword search for disinfectants that are on List N. Here's actually a screenshot of one of the of a table. It's kind of there's a lot going on it, but just note that you can see the EPA registration number, the active ingredient of the product name, the company that produced that product, the disinfection directions and preparation for the specific virus. So not all of them are, and none of these actually is the SARS-CoV-2 virus, but it's on the List N because it shows that in this case, why is this product on List N? It kills a human coronavirus similar to SARS-CoV-2. This product is on this list because it kills a harder to kill pathogen than SARS-CoV-2, and it's using an emerging viral pathogen claim. So this is good information to be able to check against, you know, the products that you're planning on purchasing or that you're already using to kill the COVID-19. And if it's not on this list, then I'm sorry, to kill the virus. And if it's not on this list, then it is it has not shown or proven that it would be effective against the virus. So you don't want to use it for that purpose if it's not on this list, or it doesn't say it specifically on the label. Now I want to move into devices that claim to kill SARS-CoV-2. And this is something I've recently learned about, but I certainly have seen lots of, I've seen some devices that are being marketed, especially earlier this year. So EPA, these do fall under EPA, but they're not regulated in the same way as a pesticide product, as a chemical. There is no registration number for devices that make pesticidal claims, but they do have an EPA establishment number. So you want to look for that on the product. But EPA does not require any data to be submitted to verify their claims concerning safety or effectiveness. But if you see false or misleading claims, like something looks really unreasonable, it probably is not true, and or it needs to be checked out, and you can and should report that to EPA, because it's a product that's making a claim that, and they will then be required to provide evidence to show the device's effectiveness by EPA. So I do have on here, watch out for antimicrobial devices that claim to disinfect, sanitize, and or sterilize items or ambient air. This generally can't be evaluated, and the consumer must do their own due diligence. So if you purchase one of these things, it might or might not be doing what it says it is going to do. And there's really no way to check. And EPA does not require any of that information in order to give them an EPA establishment number. And this is hopefully something that FIFRA can be amended to take on. That's my plug. Here's an example. I just Googled COVID-19 devices or something, or coronavirus devices. And I have a few examples of some things you can find online for sale. So, and I tried to remove the distinguishing company information just in case, I don't know, like just in case. So, but if anybody wants to know what these are, I can send the link. So this particular product is an air purifier, and I just wanted to show that, so it's got this filtration process and sanitizing process that uses UV disinfection. And it claims to eliminate 99.9% of COVID-19 virus, the SARS-CoV-2, in a room in 538 square foot in 15 minutes. Now, I don't know if that would be considered a false or misleading claim, but it would be interesting to ask them for their data, just as a consumer, to show how they actually eliminated 99.9% of the virus, the SARS-CoV-2 virus, in the room. But so here's a device that claims to kill the virus that causes COVID-19. Here's another one that's a UV sterilization wand, and it actually doesn't say that it kills that it kills the SARS-CoV-2 virus. But notice this little graphic that looks really like a SARS-CoV-2 virus. So it's kind of making you think that it does. And it says that a quick wave of the wand and all of your dangerous viral bacteria is gone. Now, I'm kind of wondering what a viral bacteria is, because viruses and bacteria are different things. So even, their wording is kind of like, so, and 40% off now while supplies last. So this looks to be something that, boy, I would really like to see the efficacy of this, and how they're eliminating 90% of bacteria from all surfaces everywhere by their UV sterilization wand. So, these are products that there might be companies, there might be organizations that are coming to tribes and other communities saying, hey, purchase these things to make it safe in your buildings, in your offices, in your homes. But it doesn't, just buyer beware on these things, because just know that just because it's for sale, doesn't mean that it has been vetted. And especially with these devices that claim pesticidal claims against SARS-CoV-2, there's really they're not required to show any information when they get registered or when they have their EPA establishment number. I have a few EPA resources, or resources that are on EPA's website regarding frequently asked questions. There are enforcement actions on COVID-19 activities, and also there's a place to report environmental violations if the products are making coronavirus claims. So please feel free to kind of look at that and use it. And now I want to move into the roundtable portion of this with our last 15 minutes. And I know we can't speak directly, so please put your questions or your answers in the chat. But these questions so I have questions for all of you who are involved in tribal environmental programs, or in your health programs, or tribal leadership. My first question is, and hopefully we can talk about it, and I'll get started with answering, but please, as soon as you start typing your answers in, We can talk back and forth that way. So my first question is, what are some of the issues that have come up regarding SARS-CoV-2 disinfectants with your tribe? Like, was it your environmental department that was involved in handing them out? Did you guys get to choose, kind of vet which products? Um, and if so, how did you decide which products were going to be the right ones to, to use for safety in your community? And then my next question, so feel free to put in anything that you can about that. My next question is, have you had to address products making misleading claims? Did a snake oil salesman come to your tribal office and say that they're going to wave a UV sterilization wand on all your desks and it was going to be COVID free? And what did you do about that? And also, what kind of outreach has been successful regarding use of disinfectants and sanitizers for your tribe? So while you're thinking about all of those, I do see a couple of questions in the chat that I'll answer and then go and put more questions in here because we're in the question and answer session and also this roundtable. So feel free to answer any of those questions that are on the screen. So I see one of the questions is, what does the EPA establishment number look like? And Mandy, I don't know the answer to that. I've actually never looked. So, but I think it's going to say EPA establishment number, and you'll have a series of digits. And there are some folks from EPA on here, and maybe they can give an example of one in the chat. But just like with the EPA registration number for pesticides, for the chemicals, it says EPA registration number, and sometimes that's abbreviated, and then it'll give those digits. So I'm hoping that someone from EPA can, okay, so Julie from EPA says an EPA establishment number looks very much like a registration number. So, but it'll just say establishment, EPA establishment. You will not see an EPA registration number on a device because, again, EPA does not require a registration of devices. Only that the establishment has, registered itself, I guess. There's an establishment number. There is a question about register versus approved. Please explain. So it's just pesticides have to, if something is making a pesticidal claim, there's a product that says it's killing something. It will have, in order for it to make that claim legally, it has to have an EPA registration number. So that's basically it. There's no EPA approval number. It's when EPA registers a pesticide, it is basically saying, yes, we accept all of your data. You meet all of our criteria. We will give you that EPA registration number. And then, they'll finalize the label, and the product then can be sold for that use. So registration is basically approval, except it's not EPA saying, oh, we approve this pesticide is non-toxic. It's just registering it using the data that was provided by the company that is trying to get it registered. And EPA does review that data. I don't know to what extent. Is it like the inspectors of anything, there's only so many of them. I don't know, like behind the scenes, if EPA is able to I'm assuming, yes, you must look at all of the data. So, but some things get unregistered, right? Or deregistered or taken off the market. So some new information comes to light that wasn't originally shared, or maybe laws change. So the next question is, so Lori has, thank you, Lori. She's provided in the chat some pictures of the EPA establishment number. So that's really helpful. Thank you for that. And Julie is putting some more information about registration and reporting. Thank you for that. Somebody asked, do all establishment numbers indicate state or production location? And Julie has said yes, and there are foreign establishments as well. And the state or country is abbreviated. Okay, so I'm not seeing any answers yet to this, but keep putting your questions and any comments into the chat. I want to focus on some of these questions of how they affected Big Valley. And if anything, if that sparks anything, please share your information. So some of the issues at Big Valley, where I work, some of the issues that have come up regarding the SARS-CoV-2 disinfectants with our tribe. I remember that our social services department and our tribal administration was able to go door to door and hand out disinfectants, gloves, hand sanitizers, cleaning products, and that type of sort of house care stuff during the beginning of when the pandemic was really going around. We had a lot of cases at Big Valley, unfortunately. And we had some spikes. We actually had some deaths, unfortunately. And so it was really important to get the message out about that households, when we have multi-generational households and family members that come in and out, that is one way to really to be exposed at a much higher rate. And that's a hard one, in communities to figure out how to deal with that. So what was really emphasized was masking, how to care for someone with COVID if you don't have it yourself. And we put out some outreach that is on our website about how to take care of your household when some people have COVID and some people don't. At first the reaction was just to go and buy every cleaning product and every disinfectant on the market. So the list end became really helpful for us over time, because then we could start to compare what was on there and make suggestions. So our EPA department made suggestions to the departments that were purchasing disinfectants, so of which ones that should be used for the SARS-CoV-2. So we were really happy about that list end. Have we had to address products making misleading claims? Yes, we have. There were people who came out and who came out and said, yes, we'll spray this surface stuff on your all your surfaces in your building, and that will kill the virus causing COVID-19. And so I was like, well, can I see your EPA registration number? And I looked it up, because I like to do that. Anyone making claims of anything, I'm going to look it up and do my homework. It wasn't approved for use, and it wasn't it wasn't registered as being able to kill SARS-CoV-2. And it also didn't, it wasn't on the list N. So, it was basically, we said, no, we don't want that to be used here. Thank you very much. Goodbye. So that was, so we had to deal with that. And I've definitely heard of other tribes that have had, some products of that nature being marketed to them to sanitize and disinfect their communities. So Lawrence, like troublemaker looking things up. Yes. So what kind of outreach has been successful regarding use of disinfectants and sanitizer for our tribe? At Big Valley, we have, always pushed the thing about reading the label. I think there was some disconnect because it was a different department that was handing it out. And so we didn't actually get to, kind of be face to face with people because the social services department was doing it. But we did share that information about proper use of the disinfectant and sanitizer with social services, and we had a handout for them. So, was it successful? I don't know, but people did. I don't know how much, if people had other questions per se. So, it's a place in our program that we can strengthen is kind of prepping other departments on these pesticide issues when they're the ones that are really getting that face time with the community. So on the to-do list. So there's a comment in here. The Lone Pine Tribe did go door to door almost monthly and give out face masks and shields, along with hand sanitizers, food boxes, toilet paper, as well as paper towels. They did give mainly bleach. Oh, that's great. That sounds really effective in terms of providing a bunch of different things that everybody needed during those times and still need to this day. The bleach, that sodium hypochlorite is, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, is one of the active ingredients that I have seen on the list N. Julie, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure I've seen that. So, and it could be now that when you're handing out bleach, if it is for disinfecting surfaces, you definitely want to look and see if the EPA registration number is on the list N, or if the label itself says not human coronavirus, but SARS-CoV-2, or mentions the virus that kills the virus that produces COVID-19. So, any other questions? I hope this was helpful in providing a context for what kind of products are out there, what the regulations are, and a little bit of background about COVID-19, which we all know a lot about at this point. Okay, Julie says, I believe there are products with that active ingredient on the list. Yeah, the sodium hypochlorite, which is the active ingredient in bleach. So Lori asked, if you had to do things all over again, knowing all you know now, what would you do differently and what would you do the same? What I do want to do is have, because I'm also the emergency management director, and I think it's important to meet with meet with tribal leadership and the heads of departments to go over a game plan for pandemic. And that includes making sure that staff stays safe when they are serving the community, and also that they're getting the most up-to-date, correct information out about how to use these products, how to store them, how to dispose of them. Those are, I don't think we totally had that down with this pandemic, and there's always going to be people's choices. They're not necessarily going to want to follow all of these things, but the best you can do is to get the word out there about disinfectants and sanitizers and the activities that are known to reduce, kill the virus and to reduce transmission. So it's, keep on keeping on with that. I wanted to show these beautiful pictures from Bonnie Lockhart and Mio Marufo in their mask awareness project. There's a URL for this project, and these cards are on that website. We got some for Big Valley, and we're handing them out. And it is, just a beautiful way to depict that, how to take care of each other during these difficult times. So if I have 2 minutes left, so I, thank you all for the opportunity. Hope this was helpful, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and see you in another session. I'm going to go ahead and stop broadcast.